Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. Greenwood Hills, on the outskirts of San Francisco, was a neighborhood where perfection seemed written into the condominium regulations. The lawns, of vibrant green, were cut to the exact same height, the shrubs trimmed like modern sculptures. The houses, all built in a sleek yet luxurious style, looked like they'd stepped out of a sustainable architecture catalog. White walls, glass facades, pale wood siding, and gleaming solar panels capturing the California sun. The streets were silent, with the latest electric cars, Tesla, Lucid, Rivian, gliding silently along the perfectly paved roads. Even the neighborhood children seemed calibrated, polite, trilingual by the age of 5, enrolled in coding and yoga programs by kindergarten. There was an almost clinical tranquility, where the slightest disorder seemed out of place, like a stain on a pristine suit. It was in this apparent perfection that he lived. Madison Clark. She embodied that world, that promise of unwavering success. The only child of a biotech magnate, she inherited not only the family business, but also the invisible pressure to be a model woman. Elegant, always impeccable, she managed her days like a conductor manages a symphony. Meetings, charitable foundations, charity brunches, interviews on maternal mental health. And yet, behind her calm gaze, hid an abyss. Because everything in his life was under control, everything except Noah, his 6-year-old son, his most fragile world. Noah was different from birth. A quiet baby, then a distant toddler. He never answered his mother's calls, never responded to smiles, never sought anyone's arms. At 2 years old, the verdict was in: autism spectrum disorder, severe form, nonverbal. That day, Madison felt her world collapse inside her. Not so much because of the diagnosis, but because she understood that love, no matter how immense, was not always enough. She then hired the best experts in the country. Renowned speech therapists, ABA therapists at $300 an hour, sensory coaches from Europe. She set up a stimulation room at home, consulted neurologists, tried special diets, natural supplements, even experimental technologies. Nothing. Noah remained silent, locked in his own world. Sometimes he would scream suddenly, for no apparent reason. Sometimes he would rock back and forth for hours, staring into a corner of the ceiling. She loved him, with all her heart, but she felt exhausted, drained, helpless, and broken. Because in a world where efficiency was king, Madison had finally found the one thing she could neither control nor fix. Every Saturday morning, faithful to a ritual that she no longer understood herself, she took Noah to the Golden Grove Park. It was a large public space, a little wilder than the standardized parks in their neighborhood. There, century-old trees stretched their gnarled roots under wooden benches, squirrels hopped freely, and children, for once, shouted without being told to be quiet. Madison came here to get some air, an illusion of normalcy, and, perhaps, a miracle. That day, the sky was clear, lightly golden from the late morning sun. Noah was running in circles near an oak tree, his arms outstretched, as if trying to fly. He wasn't paying attention to anyone. Madison, sitting on a bench at a distance, was taking advantage of a rare moment of quiet to check her emails. A message from an Asian investor, another from a specialized private school. She sighed. When she looked up, she saw him. A man, sitting on the grass, not far from Noah. Black, about 35 years old. He wore a slightly worn khaki jacket and dusty sneakers. At his feet, a soft, worn backpack. He wasn't from the neighborhood, that much was obvious. He stood out in this clean, polished setting. He had no children, no dog, no book in his hand. Just him, and that gaze fixed on Noah. Madison immediately felt her chest tighten. A surge of panic, of protectiveness. A stranger, a man, alone, so close to his son. She jumped up, ready to run. But she hesitated. The man didn't move suddenly. He didn't say anything. Slowly, he crouched down, at a good distance, without imposing himself. He didn't reach out to Noah, didn't try to pull him closer. He observed. Then, with an almost imperceptible gentleness, he began to imitate child's gestures. When Noah tapped the ground with his fingertips, he did the same. When Noah spun around, the man turned, slowly, silently. Madison couldn't look away. What she saw was unreal. And then, What had not happened never produced. He arrives. Noah stopped. He stopped running. He turned to the man, and he looked at him. Not long. 2 seconds, maybe 3. But for Madison, it was an eternity. She approached, slowly at first, as if walking through water. Her sneakers barely crunched on the gravel of the path, but in her head, each step sounded like a hammer blow. What am I doing? She, Madison Clark, always wary, always in control, always at a distance. And yet, something, this sudden fragility, this shared glance, this suspended moment, had pushed her to break through her shell. Arriving a few meters from the man, she felt her voice tremble. "Excuse me." He turned his head towards her. She then noticed his eyes, deep, dark but bright, as if they had seen too many things, but without ever closing themselves off from the world. "Do you know my son?" She had meant to ask the question gently, but she heard tension in her own voice, a hint of suspicion. The man stood up slowly, wiped his hands on his pants, then gently shook his head. "No, ma'am. I was just passing by." "But—" He paused, his eyes returning to Noah. "I grew up with someone like him. My brother, Elijah." "Is he autistic?" Madison asked, as if the word was still struggling to get out of her mouth, despite all the times she'd heard it. "Yes. And nonverbal, too. Until we stopped trying to make him talk." He turned to her, and in his gaze, there was no judgment. Just a calm truth. A lived truth. We stopped imposing our language on him, and we started learning his. Madison remained silent. She felt her fingers tremble slightly around her phone, which she hadn't even put away. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "It's just that. I've never seen this kind of moment. He never looks at anyone. He never. He did it today." They stood there for a few seconds, watching Noah, who was now gently tapping the trunk of a tree. "My name is Khalil. Khalil Harris. I live not far from here, right on the edge of Mission Bay." "Madison Clark." She gave a nervous chuckle. "You know, I thought I was a mom who could handle everything, and I realize I don't even understand my own son." Khalil nodded slowly. "It's not that you don't understand. It's just that no one has given you the right tools. You're not the problem. It's not him either. It's the system around you." He explained to her that he worked part-time in a community center for neurodivergent children, that he led music and free movement workshops. He was not a therapist. He made that clear right away. "I don't have a prestigious degree, but I understand that silence. The one that speaks differently." That day, Khalil stayed for almost an hour. He didn't try to impose himself on Noah. He followed his rhythm. When the child started running in a spiral, Khalil would move away a little, then come back. At one point, Noah sat on the ground, picked up some leaves, and arranged them in a line. Khalil crouched down beside them, not too close, and added a leaf to the line of leaves. Noah didn't protest, and Madison stood there, stunned, her heart hanging, as if she were observing a miracle she had not witnessed since the birth of her son. The following Saturdays, what had been a coincidence became a ritual. Every week, Khalil arrived with the same worn jacket, his backpack containing a bottle of water, a notebook, a few figurines he sometimes used, and a disarming humility. Noah, at first, ignored him, like everyone else. Then, as time went on, he looked for him. He didn't smile, but he was approaching. Sometimes he would sit near him. Once, without explanation, he held out a twig. Khalil accepted it without question. He didn't say thank you. How understands that? For Noah, this gesture was everything. Madison, from her bench, missed nothing. Every little progress was a revelation. Every Saturday was a victory. She didn't even dare believe it. After a month, she dared to propose something she would never have imagined proposing to a stranger she met in a park. "Would you be willing to come spend some time with Noah at my house? 2 afternoons a week? Of course, I'll pay you. Whatever you want." Khalil gave a small smile. "You know, I already have what I want. But if you insist on paying me, I won't refuse." And so, Khalil entered their house. This immaculate house. White walls, designer furniture, old parquet floors. Everything was organized, coldly beautiful. But it was also a house where Noah wasn't laughing, where he often screamed, where Madison, despite all her efforts, felt alone. As the weeks go by, something changed. Noah laughed sometimes. Not loudly, but he laughed. He fell asleep more easily. He would wait for Khalil behind the door, sometimes even holding a figurine he wanted to show him. And one evening, as Khalil had just left, Noah approached his mother. Slowly, very slowly, he raised his hand, and with his fingertips, he touched his face. Madison didn't move. Noah's fingers slid lightly across his cheek, as if wanted to understand her through touch. As if he was finally saying to her, "I see you." She stood there frozen. Then, when he went back to playing as if nothing had happened, she went upstairs, went into the bathroom, and cried all night. No sadness, no tiredness. She cried with gratitude and relief, because for the first time, she felt that something was happening. Heal. One evening, after a peaceful dinner where Noah had fallen asleep on the couch, his cheek resting on Khalil's shoulder, Madison remained silent for a long moment, observing the two silhouettes in the dim light of the living room. There was a tenderness in that image that no therapy, no treatment, no certified expert had been able to offer her son. She stood up slowly, poured 2 cups of tea, and sat down opposite Khalil. "I've been thinking," she said cautiously. "I'd like to suggest something to you. If you're interested, I could finance your studies. A specialized school. To become a full-time therapist. You're made for this." Khalil looked at her for a long time. His face remained peaceful, but something shifted in his eyes, a sincere gratitude, mixed with a gentle reserve. "The pose knows taxes. Thanks, Madison. Really. But I'm going to decline." She blinked in surprise. "For what?" He shrugged slowly. "I don't need a degree to listen to a child. I grew up with someone no one understood. We learned to listen to each other in silence. What I want to do is not become an expert. It's to open a free, open, vibrant place for families who aren't as lucky as you. Because where I come from, these children are invisible, or worse, considered problems to be corrected." He paused, looking toward the hallway where Noah was sleeping. "They just need a place where they can be themselves, without anyone trying to change them." A heavy but luminous silence fell. Madison felt something crack inside her, an old illusion, the one that she could solve everything with money. She understood then what she had truly received. It wasn't a paid service nor medical support. It was an act of humanity, a profound commitment, a selfless love, and this was coming from a man so many people around him would never have looked at twice. A black man, with no formal education, plain clothes, and a quiet voice. A man some mistakenly thought was silent, when in fact he was simply listening. She decided to help him, but in her own way. A year later, the Center Silent Bridges opened its doors in a renovated old building in Oakland. From the moment you walked in, you could tell this place was unlike any other. The walls were painted in soft colors, the cushions on the floor were inviting, and children's drawings covered the walls. There were no rows of plastic chairs or cold hallways. Just space. Welcoming. Respect. People came here to talk, or to be silent, to play, to draw, to sit next to someone without being asked to say a word. There were no complicated forms, no jargon, just humans and deep listening. Madison was its main patron, but she remained discreet. It was Khalil who carried this place. His calm, his non-judgmental gaze, his meaningful silence. He never spoke of Noah as a case. He simply said, "He's a child. He breathes differently." Noah went there every week. He still didn't talk much, but he laughed. He rested his head on other children's shoulders. He painted strange, beautiful shapes, full of movement. He touched the leaves, the faces, the textures. He lived. On the day of the official inauguration, Madison spoke before a small crowd of parents, children, friends, and onlookers. She was moved, but upright. She wore a simple, unadorned dress because she wanted people to listen to her words, not her appearance. "I spent a fortune to help my son. I consulted the best specialists, paid for expensive centers. But it was a man with no qualifications, to whom no one really wanted to listen, who saw my child. Really saw him. This center is his work. It's his vision." She turned to Khalil. "And for him, I ask you to open your eyes. Because sometimes, those who have the most to give are those we never look at." A palpable emotion ran through the assembly. Some parents wept silently. Khalil, however, said nothing for a moment. He leaned toward Noah and gently took his hand. Then he approached the microphone and said simply, "It's not about curing them. It's about loving them as they are." A long silence followed. Then applause. Real applause. Deep applause. That day, Silent Bridges became more than a center. It became a symbol, that of a gentle revolution, made of listening, respect, and bonds woven in silence.